And so with the next distinction, it's the difference between a feeling and an emotion. And so most of the time we use these two words, intersposed with each other. We tend to think they mean the same thing because they're both experienced on a bodily level as a bodily sensation. But they're really completely different. And to recognise the difference is really important because this is the key to mastering your emotions, your thoughts, your behaviours. In other words, being able to make your life work in the way that you want it. And so to understand what is an emotion is a reaction. And it's a reaction to something that is unresolved. It's unresolved in your psychology and has been stored, and something in present time has triggered it. It can be from childhood experiences, ancestral memory, a past life. Childhood experiences means something that actually happened to you as a child. So it could have been your first day at school and it was a very rough experience. Ancestral memory basically means your mother had a whole lot of issues around relationships, love, feeling safe, whatever, money, work, and because you loved her, she loved you, it became a mechanism by which this unresolved emotion with your mother was passed on to you, or it could even come from another time. But the main thing is this emotion that you're experiencing, this reaction that you're feeling, is to do from a past experience. It's not necessarily to do with right now. Yes, something's triggered it off, someone said no to you, you've had a disagreement, a disappointment, but the effect is far out of proportion to the present time experience. That's because there's this stored emotion, and that emotional content will affect the way you think about things and also condition your beliefs as to what you should do and how you behave. And so it's important to recognise that this feeling or this bodily sensation is more an emotion than a feeling. Whereas a feeling is different altogether. A feeling, on the other hand, is a form of communication. And with a feeling, it's like one of your five senses of seeing, hearing, tasting, smelling, and we also call it feeling. And most people's understanding of feeling is basically a form of touch. But there's a more subtle version of feeling. And it includes the ability to sense the emotional state of other people and your environment around you. Yes, I've got a feeling sensation, so I can tell if someone touches me and whether they touch me in a caring way or whether they're touching me in a very indifferent sort of way or whether they're touching me in a quite negative way. So that's the very basic understanding of feeling. But I could come into a room and someone's upset, and if I'm tuned in, I could feel that upset without them having to say anything. Or I could come into a room where people have been arguing for some time and now they've left, and there's a feeling of disquiet in the room. Even though they're no longer there, there's kind of like an emotional residue that's been left in the environment for a period of time. You could come and clean that room by opening the windows and doors, by vacuuming the dust and stuff, or by burning a candle or something, and then you could come into that room and you wouldn't feel anything. But if you came into the room immediately after someone had an upset, there's a chance you could feel it. Or if you went into a house where something really tragic occurred, someone had died, then you may feel that sense of heavy emotion afterwards. This is a communication. This is real. This isn't an imagination. This is your emotional sensitivity. A more everyday example of that is Say you and I are in the audience of a theatre and we're watching a play about a loving relationship, and the relationship's just ended. The man walks off the stage and the woman remains and she's grieving. And you and I feel her sadness because she's transmitting sadness. She's an actress. She's in the feeling state of sadness. She's not really sad, she's acting sad. And she may have performed this play more than 20 times. It's a job, but she knows how to be in a feeling state of sadness as if she really was sad. And because she's transmitting sadness, you and I, and if we're sensitive enough, will pick this sadness up. It's like hearing a sound. A dog's barking. While the dog is barking, you hear it. Once it stops barking, there's nothing to hear. And so this feeling state is the ability to sense emotion in your environment. And that is a basic sense we all have. But because of unresolved issues in our childhood and this massive store of emotion, it clouds our sensitivity, it clouds our emotional sensitivity, and I'll explain that in a moment as to why it gets shut down. But let's assume you are experiencing this sadness that this actress is transmitting, and you have unresolved sadness in your life about a relationship that didn't work or something, and then that initially you would feel the sadness because that is being communicated, transmitted, and then that sadness that you're feeling would activate, would trigger this unresolved sadness, and now you would actually be left feeling sad even after the actress stopped transmitting the sadness. And so this has now shifted from a feeling of receiving the sadness to an emotion of experiencing an unresolved piece of your own psychology, and it's now coming to the surface. But this ability to tell the difference between a feeling and emotion is critical, because that gives you some power over the emotional experience. And if you feel an emotion, I can say almost exclusively, you've got to discount it in that moment as being an accurate representation of what's taking place, because your own internal state is being activated and it's clouding your ability to think clearly. If this is a feeling that's coming through, whole different ball game. If this is a feeling, then it's a communication. And this feeling works on a number of levels. On the everyday level, it's you picking up the emotion that's existing in the environment that you are in. And so, yes, I'm feeling it because it's there, it's being transmitted, or it's been deposited in that environment, and I can still feel the residue of it. The other way you can experience it as a feeling is through your intuition. You can get guidance. Suddenly your guidance comes through. It's almost like a third force is operating and a piece of advice is being given to you. Twice in my life I have been given, or several times in my life, I've been given guidance from another source. And on the first occasion I received it, to my great detriment, I didn't listen to it. And the corresponding experience took about 5 years to resolve, and it was extremely difficult and unsettling in my life. And it was all about a relationship. But I resisted what I was being told, and I went forward with a relationship when my inner voice was saying, move on, it's time to go. And that was bad. Whereas at other times, it's come through and said, don't do that, I haven't done that, and things have worked out. Or do this, I've done that, and it's worked out. And so when I get this feeling state, I really listen intently, because this is significant for directing me through my life. And I need to be able to tell the difference between my emotions and my feelings. And one of the ways to distinguish these two is by its voice. And when I say, you know, the emotions and the feelings have a voice, what occurs is the voice of my feelings is actually quiet. It's a very quiet thing. It doesn't shout at you. You've got to pay attention. You've got to be quite still. And this is, it just won't force itself on you. You've got to be sensitive to it. Whereas the voice of your emotions is very loud, and you have to, you don't even have to worry, it's shouting at you, and if you're not careful, it's drowning you out. So feelings come through very subtly, very quietly. Emotions come up very strongly. And so if you are unsure and it's feeling quite strong, you can almost always say it's an emotion. And then if it is an emotion, what you need to do is put whatever decision you're going to make on hold until this emotional experience goes through its cycle. And it can take anything from a few minutes to several days, depending on how it affects you. There used to be a time when I would get upset in a relationship and I could remain upset for up to a week, and then I would just have to be very careful about saying things and doing things until I calmed down. Other times, you know, the emotion comes up, I look at it, and within 10 or 15 minutes it settles, and then I can go back and be normal again. But this emotion is important to recognise and to see it as something that's being activated from the unconscious, and it's more a detoxing thing that's happening than it is a guidance that you can really trust. And so you've got to kind of think, no, put it to one side. Feelings and emotions are significant, because this is the difference between understanding whether you should trust what you're experiencing and whether you should put it on hold and wait till a later time and then make a decision.